Здравствуйте, Namaskar, welcome to the Friday Meet, organized by the Russian Center for Science and Culture in Kolkata. Today, we'll have the focus on no one else but conscience of India, Rabindranath Tagore, who needs no introduction to you, but he was a popular, famous, and a man very close to the heart of the Russian people for several years, for several decades. Before the October Revolution of 1917, some works of Tagore were already translated in Russian language. Among them were poems of Gitanjali, then prose like Gardener, Post Office, King of the Dark Chamber, Chitra, and many others. However, these were free translations and mainly from English to Russian. But immediately after the October Revolution, the intellectuals of Russia who were very much interested to know and to make them known to the people of their own country, literature of different countries of the world. And Tagore's position was top among them. Between 1914 and 1917, though these translations were made freely from English to Russian, but this time the approach was to make direct translations from mainly from Bengali. And in these works, people like Ivan Bunin, the famous literate, persons like poet Nikolai Pusheshnikov, and literary critic like Alexei Gruzinsky took important roles for translation and editing of these publications. In 1918, four volumes of poems, mainly from Gitanjali, were translated and published. By 1925, a person named Mikhail Tubiansky, who was a student of the famous public figure and educationist Fyodor Shervatsky, took initiative to translate Tagore's works from Bengali to English. And in his works, even after that, after Mr. Tubiansky, many people came forward. Among them were persons like Boris Pasternak and Anna Akhmatova, famous poets. So Tagore became a household name to the people of Russia, to the people of Soviet Union. By 1955 and 57, Tagore's works were published in 8 volumes, and on occasion of Tagore's birth centenary celebration, by 61 to 65, in 12 volumes, Tagore's works were published. Tagore became known to the Russian people through his voice, through his pains. When he stood against the fascist aggression in Spain, when his open letter against fascist Franco were written, those were immediately published in Russian. His stand against fascism in Italian aggression or in the Japanese aggression in China or somewhere else, even in Germany's rise of fascism, Tagore's viewpoint were always focused in the Russian journals, in the newspapers, and even published as articles and were included in his works. After that, poets like Veronika Tushinova also freely translated Tagore's poems, and the lyrics were translated, and famous cultural group from Uzbekistan like Yela, they even put into tune separately Tagore's poems, like one of them was from Tagore's last poem or Shesher Kobita. These were also introduced in the modern films of Russia, and they became very popular. Tagore was popular from the very beginning. Tagore was expected in Russia from the early days. As you know that, or perhaps you do not know, that immediately after the October Revolution, Russian consulate office in Kolkata had to be closed because Great Britain and other Western countries, they didn't recognize the new government. However, when in 1924 the Russian consulate was reopened, people from Russian diplomatic sources contacted Indian intellectuals, including Tagore. And Tagore received invitation year after another to visit Russia. His invitation came first in 1924, immediately after the opening of the consulate. Then in 1925, when Tagore visited China, a Russian diplomat, Leo Karagan, met him separately and also invited Tagore to visit Russia. Tagore was more or less sure that he will be visiting Russia, which was his dream. He was expecting to see or witness the construction of a new country, the fight against illiteracy, the struggle for building a new culture, a new society, a new man, a new agricultural system, and the new industry. You all know that during this and after the October Revolution, Russia was sanctioned or surrounded by economic blockade by 14 countries. Despite that, the people of the country were confident enough that they will make the country topmost and they will introduce the country as a new country to the people of the world. Tagore was very much eager to visit Russia. In 1925, on occasion of the 200th anniversary of the Academy of Sciences, Tagore was invited along with few other intellectuals of India. They were persons like Ramkrishna Bhandarkar, the famous and the honorary member of the Russian Academy of Sciences, then Surendra Dasgupta, who was a historian, Dr. D. Modi, a linguist, and no one else but Professor C.V. Raman, the famous scientist. Tagore was also invited to participate at the 200th anniversary of the Academy of Sciences. Only Professor Modi and C.V. Raman were able to attend this celebration program. Tagore was not allowed to go. However, in the next year again, when he was in Stockholm, in Sweden, he was met with another Russian diplomat, A.A. Arosev, and he extended his invitation on behalf of the government of Soviet Union to Tagore to visit Russia. Again, the same year, 1926, Tagore met Anatoly Lunacharsky, People's Commissariat, and the Minister of Education of the Soviet government. Anatoly Lunacharsky also invited Tagore to visit Russia. Almost it was sure that he will be visiting Russia in the year 1926. A committee or the reception committee was formed, headed by Anatoly Lunacharsky. Persons like Konstantin Stanislavski and Vsevolod Meyerhold, famous theatre personalities, then P.S. Kogan, an eminent social personality, and Mr. M.P. Pavlushin were also as the member of the reception committee. 50 organizations were included to take part at the reception of Rabindranath Tagore to Russia, and many individuals were also there. On occasion of Tagore's forthcoming visit, the famous scientist S.F. Oldenburg wrote a wonderful article in the journal Agniok or The Spark, and poet Georgy Shengeli composed a lyric welcoming Tagore. However, this time also Tagore was unable to visit Russia. It was not only the British bureaucracy, British authority, or the colonial authority, who prohibited Tagore's visit for showing various reasons. But also there were some so-called well-wishers of Tagore who put obstacles in Tagore's visit to Russia. He was again invited in 1928, and in 1928 there was a possibility of that Tagore will be visiting in 1929, when he was to go to Japan from Canada via Korea. And the chance was that he will be visiting through the Trans-Siberian Railway, and Tagore could have made some stopover at some corners of Russia, and he could have visited Russia or Moscow at that time. However, because of his ill health, his so-called well-wishers prohibited Tagore to get down at somewhere, some place in Russia, and to visit Russia. But in 1930, when Tagore started his journey to Europe and America, and that was the last journey of Tagore to Europe and America, he began his journey on 2nd of March of that year, and in July he was in Germany, where once again Anatoly Lunacharsky met Tagore. And this time Tagore was determined that he will be visiting Russia. And ultimately he came to Russia on 11th of September for 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks. He was there for 17 days. But actually it was planned for 1 month. However, we'll know about Tagore's visit to Russia in the year 1930 in our next meet. Till then, dasvedanya. See you again. Punardarshanaya.